Martial arts have been around for thousands of years. Every culture on the planet has some version of an art form based on physical combat. Think about it. How many people that you know, that you train with, have been physically attacked outside of your school during the past week, the past month, the past year? So why do people train? It doesn't seem as though there's an epidemic of assault and batteries going on. Well, I believe it's due to the mental benefits. Back in the 1980s, I used to train with a group of Shotokan karate black belts while in grad school. A friend at the time asked me why I liked training with my karate friends so much. And I said something like, I don't know, it's a good stress release and relaxing. Well, she said, sparring with black belt karate guys trying to hit or kick you is relaxing? You know that makes no sense whatsoever, right? Well, I had to agree, but I also couldn't deny that it was indeed relaxing and that it felt good. If you train, you know there is this weird positive benefit that's hard to explain to those who don't train. Often we give some version of, I don't know, it just feels good. We all know the training feels good, but I believe that's a little too vague. Let's think a little bit about what it means to feel good mentally. Here are 10 core aspects of mental health. Each of these contributes significantly to being a mentally healthy individual out in the real world. You could make the argument that these 10 factors feel good, but also relate to being a good person. It's important to have good physical health, to take care of your body, exercise, eat healthy. It's important to be able to focus at the task at hand and be fully present, whether that's doing your work or listening to your spouse talk to you or your child show you what they learned in school today. Emotional resilience is important to meet life's difficulties, to persist when things are hard. Social connection is very important. The longest study on happiness, the Harvard Happiness Study, it's over 8 decades long, followed people over the course of a lifetime and found that the quality of social relationships was one of the more important factors in predicting happiness. Emotional regulation. If you can't regulate your emotions or the stress response, it's real hard to be a mentally healthy person. Discipline, that's what keeps us on track when we're not feeling motivation. Being able to accept your strengths and your weaknesses and being self-aware is very important for mental health. Having psychological flexibility, the old cliche that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Confidence. You have to remember things that you've mastered in order to be comfortable stepping outside your comfort zone. And purpose and meaning. When you wake up in the morning, what's your focus for the day? What gives the day at the end of the day meaning? All of these things are very important for mental health and having a feeling of well-being. So where does training come in? Well, it turns out that training taps into all 10 of these pillars. And you don't have to take my word for it. The academic research supports this over and over again. I was reviewing some of the research and was looking on the National Institute of Health NIH database, and there were over 4,933 published articles looking at martial arts training. Over 350 of those articles were about martial arts training and mental health. So, we all know that training is a good workout. It's good exercise. But one study compared individual exercise with team sports, and exercise in jiu-jitsu. All three got a bump in mental health, but the jiu-jitsu group had a bump that was significantly greater than the other two groups. Mindful practices are very important, and this happens organically from training. On the mat, if you lose your focus, you get swept or submitted. That's real-world mindfulness training. Martial arts practice are linked to grit and perseverance, especially in youth. There's failure and adaptation that happens over and over again in a controlled environment, and it gets us used to seeing difficulties as not a problem, but something to overcome. There's an old Japanese saying, "Nanakarobi yaoki," which means fall down 7 times, stand up 8. That's the very definition of martial arts training. So, social connection's very important. Martial arts creates deep bonds with our peers because we all have this shared struggle. In jiu-jitsu in particular, there's the bond that forms from being vulnerable and trusting your partner when they have you in a submission and could significantly harm you, but don't, because you tap and they release the submission. This builds a profound sense of trust. Emotional regulation. You quickly, well, sometimes it's over a period of time, learn how to stay calm under pressure, because you realize that getting angry or frustrated doesn't really add anything to your game. The research has shown what's sometimes called the aggression paradox, that people that train in martial arts tend to be less aggressive than control groups. And this effect is greater the longer that people train. This effect has been demonstrated in adults, in children, and even with at-risk youth. Discipline and focus. Study shows martial arts, kids that train in martial arts improve in school. They have improved attention, self-control, and classroom performance. Adults improve in cognitive and memory functions and problem-solving abilities. This constant solving problems under pressure is a regular part of training. On the mats, if plan A fails, you pivot to plan B. This constant adapting and changing approach is an ongoing type of problem solving that translates off the mats. Confidence is remembered mastery. The more that you train, the more that you learn what works, what doesn't work, and it becomes part of you. And this allows us to extrapolate to things outside of training. Purpose and meaning. An art form, you never get to the end, so it's always a renewable resource. So, training affects mental factors, but mental factors can also affect training. Sometimes for the better, with having the right attitude while training, but sometimes mental factors can undermine training, like if I'm having trouble regulating the stress response or have a negative self-talk. So, I would argue that by paying extra attention to and actively practicing mental factors, it will enhance physical performance in training. By paying closer attention to the mental factor of training, we become more aware of how these pay off outside of the mat also. So, mental principles occur organically from training, but you can improve your training by additional practice more intentionally. And so we also want to notice how do these things that we do on the mat translate to our life off the mat? Another thing to keep in mind is what goes on in the brain. Oxytocin is a natural chemical made in the brain that acts as both a hormone and a messenger. It's often called the love hormone or the bonding hormone because when released, people feel close to others and have a feeling of trust. It's released during things like hugging a loved one, touching, a mother nursing a baby. It even happens when you're petting your favorite cat or dog. When it's released, it produces feelings of happiness and well-being. Stress chemicals such as cortisol are reduced. And so when released, it also fosters a sense of connection to those around us. So you would think that warm fuzzy things like hugging or petting your favorite dog would release oxytocin, but what happens when training in jiu-jitsu, for example? You would think all of that aggression and trying to choke or break a limb would suppress oxytocin levels. Well, actually, that's not the case. One study in 2019 looked at oxytocin levels before and after training, and they looked at individual exercise, martial arts striking, and then martial arts grappling, such as jiu-jitsu. And the pre-workout levels were all very similar, but the post-workout in jiu-jitsu, there was a spike in oxytocin levels. And this held for both beginners and experienced practitioners. These findings were reaffirmed in a systematic review in 2024, and similar findings have been found for other feel-good neurotransmitters. So there's something about the human touch of jiu-jitsu that's different from other forms of exercise or martial arts training. So keep in mind that when we're talking about mental factors, we don't just mean psychological. Sometimes psychological changes are associated with physical changes in the brain. So, when someone says, "Why do you like training?" instead of saying, "I don't know, it just feels good," say, "Every time I step on the mat, it activates the 10 pillars of mental health, and the icing on the cake is I get a good hit of oxytocin." Now, go train and have a great rest of the day.